here I go. This is about something that Kitty asked me to do 40 years ago. It was in 1986 in the autumn, over lunch. And
Could we
Kitty
see
asked,
your face?
no, I'm sorry, Tina. I've been injured. I'm in a wheelchair.
Oh,
Anyway, so Kitty Davy said that she had wanted to write a book about Baba's work with women, but she didn't have time. And she looked at me and she said, "Would you like to do it?" So a lot of tumultuous thoughts raced through my mind, like how could I write a book about Baba's work with anything? I had written a lot and published some, but I hadn't talked to Kitty about it. And I thought, I just didn't know how I could do this. But then it was then I thought, Kitty is asking me to do this. She's never really asked me to do something before. She must see an ability that I'm missing. So I said yes. I promised her I would do it. This is 40 years later. I've written the book twice. Now I've finished the third draft, but it still needs a lot of work. She wanted me to get things going. I have tried to get things going before. She said there's lots for others to do. Um, my efforts to get things going have always gone awry, which is one reason why I'm nervous because it just doesn't seem to. But Jeff did a topic on masculine feminine on Sunday, and there seemed to be a lot of interest in that. So, and I'm just going to take on, just taking on the Western women and men and the Easterners where it's appropriate in the book. So I'm going to begin with something that Baba said in 1942. And this is when he was retiring the blue bus. And he said that he had worked for 7 years with men, 7 years with boys, and was just completing 7 years of work with women. Now, nobody's ever mentioned this before. 7 years of work with women would cover about 1935 to, this was May 1942. And this was during the Blue Bus Tours, the Great World War. And so, what I've got to share today is a personal story of a big lesson that I learned about my own self as a female dealing with feminism, which I didn't much care for, but why I don't much care for it, why I'm wary of it, and of my overall theme for the book. So my story sums up both. My overall theme is that I think that what Mayor Baba is doing overall, he's not putting the soul into women and women's works. He's showing us that soulness and spirituality has always been there, but it hasn't often been recognized and it's been much put down. It doesn't mean that it's not important for women to have economic independence and go out into the world and all of that, but that home is a central part of human life and the soul is there in home and housekeeping and keeping homes beautiful. So, in my research, I read Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique, and I felt an alarm bell go up when I read that she called the kitchen soulless. And I thought, a soulless kitchen? This is the hearth fire around which people have gathered from our beginnings. And then I thought of Baba's work and how during those 7 years of work with women, the Great War began. And but even on the blue bus tours, there were long times when the women we had lovely homes to stay in, like at the links, and that women like my mother, who was newly married to my dad, an army captain, who was in England being prepared for the invasion, what did she go through? She had her first child. She had to take care of home, keep up dad's spirits, keep up spirits of her in laws and her family. And the other women when one of the soldiers got killed, they would gather together and cook for the family and comfort them. And if somebody got wounded, it's the women that took care of the wounded soldiers. Home was so essential during the Great War. And then in my personal story, Charles, in his MRT address, reminded me of how Baba had advised women during these blue bus tours to not lean on others, to lean only on him and himself. So I'm going to end with a personal story that to me puts the don't lean on others and home together. And the the fact that kitchens are soulful. So in the first years after Baba found me in 1969. I worked as an office assistant in downtown San Francisco in a very beautiful part of the city near Maiden Lane. And one of my favorite parts of my job was the manager for whom I worked would always send me out for coffee when he met with his managers. So I'd get to leave the office, go down these wide marble stairs and out this double glass door into the street. And it was very exciting. I've always loved to read and write, and I'm basically a solitary kind of person. And so it was wonderful to be alone with myself and with God Baba again, and just ordered a coffee, and he paid for me to have one too. Then I'd go back to the office, and I would usually have a few minutes to just sit and enjoy the coffee. Well, I loved this. However, feminism at that time was telling women that we needed to stop getting coffee for the boss. We needed to become the boss. Well, I didn't want to become a boss. That was way too much work and responsibility. And I enjoyed getting coffee for the boss and his managers. But I started feeling really guilty, and the guilt built up and up and up. And finally, one day I decided to support women, I had to take a stand. So I told the boss I wasn't going to get the coffee anymore. And he didn't say anything, he just found somebody else. Well, it was not very long before I realized I'd made a huge mistake. And this was where I come to the value of home and not leaning on others. I was leaning on feminism, and not that it hasn't done some good, but in this case, this advice went against something in my heart that I loved, that freedom to get the coffee, to be alone with Baba. And I'd given it up by allowing myself to be overtaken by what I call a mob rule. And so I read and reread Qualifications of the Aspirant, where Baba talks about developing our critical thinking. And, I see this, in all of us really, the importance of learning to separate who we are and what is best for us, but really to think it through so as not to get caught up in all the influences around us, including strong currents of mob thinking, which I think we're all dealing with at the moment. So that's really my introduction to my book. And one of the main themes is going to be about Baba awakening the value of the soul and home. And you think of Elizabeth and Marina, it was during the war that they actually found the Mayor Center property that Baba calls his home in the West. So I'll end there. Jai Baba, everybody.
Jai Baba Ji. Thanks for sharing.
And thank you
Any,
for this opportunity.
yeah, we have 10 more minutes, folks. Anybody who wants to share their stories?
Oh, I have 10 minutes. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought I'd used up all the 20 minutes.
See, that's how it is. You think you have less, but Actually, Baba magic happens. You will cherish every minute, and it becomes like we have more time now.
Well, the one thing I will mention, is that Baba called the blue bus Krishna's chariot. And that, of course, is the chariot that Arjuna drove, that Arjuna was in, and that Krishna drove for Arjuna during the great war in, what is it, Mahabharata. And to think of an army of soldiers together on a bus, they've got thousands of years of training on how to be together. So now you think you've got an army of women on a bus in World War II. What is the meaning of calling this Krishna's chariot? I mean, Erich was often the driver of the bus. Elizabeth did drive it a little bit, but she mostly drove the car. And I think there's so much meaning that we can find in that, and in how we always, blame war on men fighting and diplomacy, but wars wouldn't happen if women, there's just as much evil and good that goes through womanhood as men. We women are supposed to be sweetness and light, but unfortunately, evil and good pass through masculine and feminine. And there's so much related to women that women are participating in putting down right now. The instead of faithful love, they're going for hookups, and the desertion of home and family. And these are things that I grieve about because, there's an ancient Greek saying, as in the home, so in the country. So I do think, just to repeat, that one of Baba's works is to restore the value in the soul to homemaking and family. There, now I will end.
Hey,
Can you
Jill,
comment on Katie's role on the blue bus? Katie Irani, might you comment about her role, please?
Well, I know that Katie joined, she was very young, and she and Mani were best friends. So both Mani and Katie, I think, had quite a good time on the blue bus. They would joke, and, they were so young, they didn't really mind the hardships. That's my first thought.
Was
Jill,
Katie cooking for them? Was Katie cooking for those on the blue bus?
Well, I haven't focused on Katie because I'm focusing on the Westerners. I don't believe she started cooking until later. She may have helped out a bit, but Kitty Davy was in charge of the food.
Didn't Baba have a dog? Didn't Elizabeth have a dog with her?
Oh yeah, Kippy. They had a lot of
Kippy.
trouble. Yeah,
And of course, Gail has Kippy with her now.
right.
Jill, could you tell us what your key moment was when you discovered Baba?
Oh, well, it was when I was in college, and Charlie Morton invited Rick Chapman to give a talk, and it just,
Click.
all I can say is after the talk, I was standing by Rick listening to him, and I just suddenly knew that, I mean, all my life I'd been searching for something, and I finally knew I was home. This was my home, was Baba.
Great. No turning back.
No, just spending as much time as I could in India with the Mandalay while we had them, and with Kitty and Jane. One other thing I love is Jane Haynes had me read Teresa of Avila's The Interior Castle. And when you think of all the therapy going on, it's so wonderful to think that of our inner home because home's not only outer, but our inner life is kind of like our homes. And to think of it being called potentially a castle, I like that image.
Thank
I've got
you.
lots of thoughts. I mean, there's lots of things that I explore in the book that I can't, say much about here. And there's so much for others. This is a huge topic. And I'm scared of getting criticized because I'm part Irish and I get very upset.
I know the feeling.
You did beautifully, Jill.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the best thing we all can do is leave the criticism to ourselves
Yeah,
about ourselves.
well, I do criticize feminism, so I'm criticizing. So I guess
Jill, what about Narina Machiavelli's role on the Blue Bus trip?
yeah, well, I haven't really gone into her role as much as into Kitty's. I'd have to think for a minute because I think this may seem odd, but one of the things that stands out to me is how women like Narina and also Rano's mother, Nani Gailey, of how well dressed they were. They were in this blue bus and all the dust, and they always dressed really well, including high-heeled shoes. Kitty was more practical. You always see her in comfortable shoes and clothes. Sorry, that's, fashion is not trivial, really. What would we do without soldiers' uniforms and costumes in movies and plays, and even the things what the women Mandali wore in India? I loved the way they looked. And I can't live up to it. I look right now, I can't, being in a wheelchair isn't easy. But I'm walking again soon, so that's good.
So thank you so much for participating. Your story has been, I think, well received, and we appreciate it.
And like Katie said, there's plenty for others to do. This is a big topic, masculine and feminine.
Hmm.
Yeah, so much for everybody to share, and we will keep this time for that, every Monday and Thursday, 10:10 to 10:30. We will have our stories recorded. Any last words, Jack?
No, just thank you all for being here and all the sharing that's going around. And I'm looking forward to next Monday and when Alan takes over and the following Thursday, God willing. Dare I think about the future? I don't know. I just take it a moment at a time. And thank you for doing the hosting.
Welcome. Thank you, Jill, and thank you, Jack and AR, for pitching in. So I will stop the recording now.
Good.